Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to pick a fight with one of the absolute sacred cows of modern business literature.
Right, this is a big one.
It is. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn right now or walk into any bookstore, you are just hit with this wall of content telling you one thing. Empathy is everything.
It is the undisputed heavyweight champion of leadership traits right now. Absolutely.
Right. The equation is super simple. More empathy equals a better leader. And if you aren't, feeling your team, if you're not leading with your heart, you're basically failing.
Or you're seen as a relic from a bygone era.
Exactly. But today, we're looking at a data set that suggests that for a very specific, very high-intensity type of leader, empathy isn't just irrelevant. It's actually seen as a liability.
And that's where it gets really interesting, is a look at where this whole nice guy leadership narrative just hits a brick wall.
So the data set we're digging into today is from SDTEST. That's the spiral dynamics test. They ran this massive poll,
Huge, yeah.
nearly 3,000 people across 97 countries, asking a simple but really profound question. What qualities and abilities do good leaders use when building successful teams?
And usually, when you ask that kind of question, empathetic just shoots to the top of the list. It's the socially acceptable answer. It's what we're all trained to say.
Of course. But when the team at SDTEST crunched the numbers, they found this distinct anomaly. There is a specific mindset, what spiral dynamics calls the red vMEME, where the correlation with empathy went negative.
And not just zero correlation or statistically insignificant. We're talking negative correlation. It actively goes the other way.
Specifically, it was minus 0.0807. Now, for anyone who's not a statistician, that might sound like a tiny, tiny number.
Right, it seems small.
But with a sample size this big, that crosses the threshold of statistical significance.
It does. It means this isn't just random noise. We are seeing a reliable pattern where a specific worldview looks at empathy and says, no thanks, that's in my way.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to figure out why this red mindset views empathy as a weakness, and whether they might, in some contexts, actually be right, which is a scary thought, and where this thinking eventually leads them off a cliff.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a ride, because to understand this, we have to kind of suspend our judgment. I think most of us are conditioned to think anti-empathy just means psychopath.
Right, we immediately go to the villain in a movie, the cartoon bad guy.
Exactly. But in the context of spiral dynamics, that's not what's happening here. We should probably define what the red vME actually is.
Yeah, let's do that.
So in this developmental model, red isn't about evil, it's about power. It's the stage of development that's associated with the egocentric self.
The source material uses these words like command, clarity, and control.
Think of the red era in history. It's the age of empires, feudal lords, raw conquest. It's a world where might makes right.
But we're not just talking about history.
No, you see it today. Absolutely. In a modern context, you see this energy in the break things and move fast startup founder, the crisis manager, or maybe the really aggressive sales floor.
It's the jungle.
It is the jungle. And in the jungle, you don't survive by holding space for someone's feelings. You survive by being the biggest, loudest thing in the room. You survive by asserting your will.
This really clicked for me when I looked at the other correlations in the data. So red has this negative thing with empathy. But look at what it correlates positively with. I've got the chart here. Influential is plus 0.0956. Effective negotiator is plus 0.0462.
Those are active traits. They're about projecting your will outward onto the world. I influence you. I negotiate with you. It's all very directional.
But here's the one that really stopped me. There was a negative correlation, almost as strong as the empathy one, with seeing oneself as inspiring. That was minus 0.0763.
That is so counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd think a warlord or a powerful CEO would want to be seen as inspiring.
Exactly. Don't you want the troops rallying behind you? Don't you want the swelling music and the big speech?
But think about what inspiration actually implies. If I'm trying to inspire you, I'm trying to get you to want to do what I want you to do. I have to appeal to your internal motivation.
And that takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes emotional capital. It requires me to connect with your values, your feelings.
And red doesn't have time for that.
Red doesn't care if you want to do it. Red cares that you do it. The source material captures this perfectly. It says, effectiveness trumps effect.
Wow. Effectiveness trumps effect. That is such a cold line, but it's crystal clear.
It's very clear. If I'm a red leader, I don't need your heart. I need your hands. I need immediate execution of my command. Inspiring feels too fluffy. It feels soft.
It feels like you're begging.
Yes, it feels like I'm begging you to work rather than telling you to work.
Okay, so this brings us to the internal logic of this mindset, because it's so easy for us to sit back and say, well, they're just jerks. But the source highlights a specific pain point for the red leader. They're not rejecting empathy just to be mean.
No, no, they're rejecting it because it feels like a threat. This is the psychological unlock right here.
A threat how?
To a red leader, the environment feels dangerous. Always. They see the world as a zero-sum game. If I win, you lose. If I let my guard down for even a second, you're going to take my spot.
So when HR comes in and says, hey, we need to do a listening circle, or you need to be more vulnerable with your team,
The red leader doesn't hear management best practice. Not at all.
what do they hear?
They hear, please, hand over your weapon.
And the source says it feels like being disarmed.
Precisely. To them, compassion looks like incompetence. If I stop to ask you how you're feeling about the mission, I've just lost control of the mission. I've introduced a variable, your emotions, that I cannot control.
And red is allergic to things it can't control.
Deeply allergic. They view empathy as friction.
Friction. That's a great word for it. Just drag on the system.
It is.
I was thinking about this, like in a physical emergency. If the building is on fire and the fire chief stops to ask me if I feel emotionally ready to hold the hose.
You'd think he was insane. You would probably panic more because his calmness would suggest he doesn't get the gravity of the fire.
I'd want him to scream at me, pick up the hose.
And that is the gain of the red system. The source calls it unapologetic decisiveness. There is a real utility to this. We can't pretend there isn't. When chaos reigns, the group doesn't actually want a listener. They want a commander.
There's a great quote in the notes here. Empathy may build rapport, but red builds momentum.
Momentum is the key. That red energy just cuts through all the noise. It collapses ambiguity. In a startup that's about to run out of cash in 2 weeks, you don't need consensus.
No committee meeting.
No committee meetings about company values. You need a pivot. You need someone to stand up and say, we are all going left, and if you don't go left, you're off the bus. End of story.
Okay, so we've established the logic. It's about speed, survival, and control. It makes a certain kind of sense on paper. But does it actually work in the real world? Or is this just some tough guy fantasy?
This is where the data gets a little uncomfortable for the empathy is everything crowd, because the answer is yes, it works, but there is a massive asterisk attached to that yes.
Okay, let's look at the validation first. The source brings up a UC Berkeley study that really surprised me.
The one on hierarchy and cooperation?
Yeah, it found that dominant leaders, the ones enforcing clear authority and consequences, actually increased group cooperation more effectively than empathetic leaders. But, and this is the huge but, only in competitive or crisis settings.
Context is everything. The study suggests that when the stakes are super high, life or death, or the company goes bust, people stop craving comfort. They crave clarity.
They just want to know the rules.
They want to know the rules, and they want to know that someone is at the wheel. And even more importantly, they want to know that if someone else on the team slacks off, there will be consequences.
Ah, right, so the threat of punishment keeps everyone in line.
In those high-pressure moments, it creates alignment much faster than shared vulnerability does. It's the classic lifeboat scenario.
Explain that.
Well, if we're all in a lifeboat, I don't care if you like the captain. I don't care if the captain is a nice person. I care that the captain makes the guy in the back row.
Right.
Because if that guy stops rowing, we all die. So I actually want a captain who will yell at him.
That makes a lot of sense. The source also connects this to the DISC behavioral model. The D style, which is a pretty good match for red, is defined by that results-driven urgency.
Right.
And that brings in this analysis from Kevin Eckert about military units and early-stage startups.
I love that comparison. Military units and startups, it just feels right.
It seems like a stretch at first, you know, guys with guns versus guys with laptops. But they're both teams of small teams operating in extreme uncertainty.
And in both cases, the cost of failure is total. Eckert argues that what binds these units together isn't, holding hands and singing songs. It's commander's intent.
Okay, break that down for us. What is commander's intent?
It's a military doctrine. It basically means the leader defines the desired outcome so clearly, so vividly, that even if all communication is cut, even if the entire plan goes to hell, every single soldier knows exactly what winning looks like.
So they can act on their own.
They can act independently because the intent is tattooed on their brain. The cohesion comes from the mission, not the relationship.
So in these red environments, cohesion is about shared hardship, a clear enemy.
Exactly. We are fighting that thing over there. We don't need to like each other. We just need to hate losing more than we hate each other. It creates a bond, for sure. But it's a trauma bond, not a connection bond.
So red builds momentum. It cuts through noise. It aligns people fast in a crisis. It sounds, well, pretty effective.
It is effective, short term.
Okay, so why isn't this the end of the deep dive? Why don't we just say, be more red and sign off?
Because you can't live in a lifeboat forever. And this is where we have to be really, really careful with how we interpret this data.
And this is where the source material pivots hard. It acknowledges the red logic. It says, yes, this works, but then it drops the hammer. It calls this rejection of empathy a developmental limitation.
This is the critical distinction. Red leaders often look at this kind of data, that negative correlation, and they use it as a permission slip.
A justification.
A total justification.
Yeah.
They say, see, I'm supposed to be a jerk, it's effective, the data says so get over it. They use it to justify building a culture of fear.
But that's a misreading of the data.
It's a huge misreading. The source material and decades of broader organizational research points out that this is a trap. While dominance works for immediate compliance, it fails spectacularly at sustainable success.
You're getting a short-term win for a long-term loss.
It's the difference between an engine that runs on clean fuel and an engine that runs by burning its own parts.
Burning its own parts. That's a vivid image. You get a burst of heat, but you're just destroying the machine.
Well, let's look at the counter evidence. What does empathy actually do in a non-crisis environment? It increases psychological safety.
Which is the big buzzword of the decade. But explain why it matters operationally.
Because psychological safety is the bedrock of innovation. If I am leading with that red energy dominance, fear, control, you are not going to come to me with a risky, half-baked idea that might just save the company.
No way.
Yeah.
Because if it's wrong, you might bite my head off or just dismiss me.
Exactly. So red gets compliance, do what I said, but it absolutely kills innovation. It kills creativity. The message is, don't think, just do.
It kills the collective brain.
That's a perfect way to put it. In a red system, the organization is only as smart as its leader, because everyone else is just a pair of hands. In a system with empathy, you unlock everyone's brain. You get that collective intelligence.
This is what the source calls the power paradox.
Yes, it's the deep irony of power. Empathetic leaders often generate more actual sustainable power than dominant ones.
Because people choose to follow them. It's not coerced.
It's because of resilience. If you lead through fear, you have to constantly monitor everyone. It's exhausting. The moment you turn your back, the team slacks off, or worse, they start plotting to revolt.
You're a prison warden.
You're a prison warden. And that system is incredibly fragile. If the red leader gets hit by a bus, the entire organization collapses. There's no succession, no shared culture other than do what the boss says.
But when you lead through connection and empathy,
the team manages itself. They're bought in, they understand the mission, and they care about the culture. They work hard even when you aren't looking. The system can survive you.
The source material frames this in a really tragic way. It says that for red, the rejection of empathy isn't some moral failure. It's a cognitive limitation. They literally cannot see its value.
That's right. It's not that they're choosing to be evil. It's that they view empathy as weakness because they haven't developed the capacity to see it as a tool for managing complexity. They see the world in 2D power versus submission.
They don't see the 3D world of connection and nuance.
Not at all. They are using a hammer to do brain surgery.
And a hammer works great if you just need to move a rock.
Exactly. In a simple world, kill the enemy, move the rock red is fantastic. But in a complex world-managed stakeholders, innovate a product line, retain Gen Z talent red is a total disaster. You cannot order complexity into existence. You have to nurture it.
So where does this leave you, the listener? We have these two very different pictures. On one hand, you have unapologetic decisiveness that can save the day in a crisis.
And on the other, you have this tragic limitation that prevents you from ever scaling or building something that lasts.
I think the summary from the source puts it best. It all comes down to context.
Always. If you are in a crisis, if you're a founder in that do-or-die phase where speed is the only thing that matters, empathy might actually be a distraction. In those moments, you might need to tap into that red energy. You might need to be the commander.
But you have to know when to switch gears. That's the hard part.
You have to, because if you want sustainable success, if you want a company that's still around in 10 years, that rejection of empathy becomes your biggest liability. You see this with founders all the time. The very skills that got them from 0 to 1
are the exact skills that kill the company on the journey from 1 to 10?
Precisely. The red founder can't let go of control. They can't transition from being the commander to being the gardener, and so they become the bottleneck. They become the reason their best people leave.
The source is pretty clear on who this insight is for. Crisis leaders, founders trying to scale, and coaches working with that uh, high agency, low patience talent.
If that's you, or if you work for someone like that, this is your reality check. If you're that leader, you have to ask yourself, am I building momentum or am I just building fear? Because momentum carries you forward. Fear just pushes you until you trip.
And if you're that high agency leader, you probably feel that pain we talked about. You feel like empathy is slowing you down. You're the one in the meeting thinking, why are we talking about feelings? Let's just work.
And that feeling is valid, it's real. But the data suggests that slowing down to connect might be the only way to actually speed up later. It's that classic proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Red goes fast alone.
But eventually you hit a wall, or you run right off a cliff.
The source leaves us with a really provocative thought to close on. It asks, is empathy always leadership? Or is it sometimes a distraction from direction? Can strength coexist with sensitivity without dilution?
That's the million-dollar question. Can you be strong and sensitive without watering down your power? The red mindset says no. It sees a binary choice. You are either a wolf or you are a sheep.
But the evolved leader.
The evolved leader knows how to be a wolf when the wolves are at the door and a shepherd when the flock needs to grow. It's not about choosing. It's about knowing which tool to pull out of the toolbox at the right time.
Context is everything. You don't use a hammer to type an email, and you don't use a laptop to drive a nail.
Context is everything.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. A huge thank you to the team at SDTEST for this fascinating data. It really does challenge that standard narrative that nicer is always better.
It's a lot more nuanced than that. Sometimes you need nice, and sometimes you just need effective. The magic is knowing the difference.
And to you, listening, next time you feel that urge to just issue a command and cut through the noise, ask yourself, is the ship actually sinking? Or do I just need to take a breath and listen? We'll catch you on the next deep dive.